I'll try my best to speak as close as possible to the microphone. As you know, I'm a little bit tall. But yeah, this introduction is super outdated. It's from 2 years ago, and a lot have happened. As you've just heard from Billy, we're getting new Lego bricks literally every second, and it's becoming a little bit hard to catch up and to actually know what is next or to prepare for the future. So this presentation that I'm bringing to you today is to kind of take a step back and a breather. I want everyone in the room to take a second and literally breathe right now with me. Oh yeah, we don't do that often today. But at the same time, it's important to be able to, move up. So this is my updated introduction. I don't want you to read it. It's actually boring, but a couple key elements that I want to surface. I'm extremely honored to be here today. I visited the School of Harvard in 2010 when I moved to Canada. I'm from Guadeloupe, which is a French island in the Caribbean. I bet no one in this room knows where to put it on the globe. And this is why I'm super proud to be here. There's probably no one from my country that ever stepped foot in this university. But when I moved to Canada, the reason why I changed countries was to actually get better opportunities and to actually increase the amount of skills that I would have, but also the opportunities I would have on the career. And since then, a lot of things have happened. I worked with companies like OpenAI, sponsored my first exhibition in Montreal, which was in the museum called Afro-Caribbean Museum. And it was an exhibition that was trying to put the culture of the Caribbean to the world as an example of melting pot culture and to bring this inspiration to the rest of the world so that other people from their own countries can leverage emerging technologies to represent their own countries. And then I worked with companies like Meta, like IBM. I have 15 years of experience as a product designer in XR and AI. I've worked with a lot of people that are in this room today from major different companies. And if you go on everyone's LinkedIn, we all moved so much, it's almost impossible to catch up. But the beauty is that we're all here today because we're passionate about technology in general, but we also care about the human being. And I'm actually extremely honored and proud from the question we heard today. A lot of people referencing responsibility, ethics, all of that. This is super important. A lot of the work that I do with these companies come from a perspective of keeping them honest. Even working at Unity, my job is literally an AI advocate for responsible AI. And it's not easy. You sometimes have to, actually yell and fight to keep companies honest because the goal is to make money, not to serve human beings. But I'm an artist, and I'm also a human being that cares about the future. This is me with the first maybe iPad at the time, 20, 30 years ago. And I need to put this little meme here for my sister, Janice. She was like, "Oh, you're going to Harvard? That's crazy." Rihanna was probably the first Caribbean to do it, but yeah, I made it to Harvard, Janice. We did it. But in terms of something a little bit less fun to talk about, I wanted to talk to you about the fragility of culture. Who knows Boa Senior? She was the latest woman from her culture. And when she passed away in 2000, her entire culture disappeared with her, her entire language. She was the last person to speak her own language, a 65,000 years old language that disappeared with her. The island is in the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean. It's actually very interesting because no one also can probably put that on the map if I just ask you. And then I learned about their story, and I worked with Skillshare to actually make a video about it. It's on YouTube. I really recommend you to watch it. It's like just 7 minutes long. But what really spoke to me was to look into what Microsoft was doing with language and using emerging tech to actually preserve it. So if you never heard about the Elora project, it's actually pretty cool. It's enabling low-resource languages. And the first thing that jumped to my mind is this sentence that I'm going to quote right now. Every 2 weeks, a language disappears. So I'll let you sit with that. That's actually pretty crazy to think about. Every 2 weeks, a language disappears. And if you look at the stats on the left, at the very top, you have languages that are extinct with the red bar. And then all the way to the right, languages that are international, like English or French. I'm actually French, that's why my accent is a bit weird. And then on the second row, that's how much people are speaking these languages. So as we can see, there's 0.1% of people speaking international languages, and also not a lot of people speaking extinct languages because they are gone. Everything is in the middle, and that doesn't represent more than 10% of languages. Some languages that we will call dialects or that we don't even know about. But then in terms of the impact of those languages and where they are spoken and their kind of like impact on the world, that's the last graph, obviously the 0.1% is more of the 80 to 90%. Most of us in this room speak English, even though it's not necessarily our native language. And when I heard about this, that makes me feel a little bit sad, first of all, because that means that we're probably going to continue to lose at an accelerating pace more and more languages. But it made me realize that when it comes to my language, Creole from Guadeloupe, if I speak it right now, Kijan Azot, Kijan Sakai, non, moi c'est Manuel, most of you don't understand what I mean. But I tried something. I had the opportunity to be on TEDx Pointe-à-Pitre, which is in Guadeloupe, my hometown, in 2022. And at the time, I was sponsored by OpenAI to do my exhibition, and I had access to ChatGPT before the rest of the world. And a week before it came out, I was actually presenting on stage with ChatGPT in front of people that had no idea that their life would change a year or two later. And what I tried, the first prompt that I tried was to speak in Creole and see if it would understand me. And guess what? It did. And I was quite surprised because no one in this room, I bet, can understand Creole. ChatGPT did. So the first question I asked myself is, how the hell did it learn Creole, first of all? Where's the data coming from? All the ethical questions, sure. But then in the response, I realized it was not exactly Guadeloupean Creole, it was Haitian. And that's because if you go on Google right now and you try to translate to Creole, there's only one Creole, it's Haitian Creole. It's about 80% close to Guadeloupe, but there's this 20% that if you speak to a Guadeloupean person in Haitian Creole, they'll be like, you're from Haiti, I know it. And what's interesting is that the LLM doesn't care about this difference because it was trained on what's available on the internet, the public available data or the licensed data. But when it comes to the actual Guadeloupean Creole language, to make sure that ChatGPT would be accurate, I needed to create my custom GPT to fit it with more PDF content from poets and artists or writers. And even there, it was still not accurate. So it made me think, how could I digitally preserve my language to make sure that first of all, that other people can speak it, that when I pass away or the rest of my culture disappears from the world, that they are able to speak it. But that LLMs that are becoming the most talked to being in the world can understand it as well, but in a way that's accurate. So it's not washed out or gentrified Guadeloupean Creole tomorrow. And I started working with OpenAI, trying to understand how we could do that. And then I started working also with open source model and see if we could actually train data, but it costs a lot. I don't have that money in my pocket. And I do think that's an effort that needs to, require government information and so on. But it's an interesting thing. The other problem is that Guadeloupean Creole is not just a spoken or written language. It's a language that includes text, sure, but also words that are spoken that cannot be translated on paper. It requires also to be able to move your hands in a certain way. And if I say a certain word without moving my hands the right way, it means the total opposite. There are some gestures that are even facial that people would really understand if they speak the language perfectly. And so I started thinking, what are those different modality of the language that we could be able to capture through large language models or through AI in general? And I thought about the Svalbard Global Seed Vault as an example of something that we've been doing already. We know that, the banana taste and flavor that we eat today is not the banana flavor of the original banana from 60, 80 years ago. That's why when you taste the banana candy, it tastes horrible. But that's the original banana taste. That is kind of chemically closer to the original banana. So they've been saving those seeds in this vault and actually trying to keep them alive so that in the future, if we lose completely bananas, we'll be able to maybe revive it or clone it. Very recently, we've seen that we've been able to revive the first two dire wolves, and there's a lot of dies that going to continue to happen with CRISPR and a lot of evolution of technology. But when it comes to languages, how can we save the seeds of our language, whether it is spoken, written, moved, gesture-based? So I thought about doing a Svalbard digital equivalent of that. And that's where I think my presentation kind of connects with what Billy was showing earlier, which is, I think, the beauty of what I call the lie-down moment. In 2020, I had access to the Sketchfab challenge called One Scan a Day. And in Montreal, there was a couple of artists that were every day going outside and just taking one scan every single day. The goal was to do a little bit like the early days of Instagram and capturing a photo every day, but in 3D. And little did we know that literally a week after the iPhone came out with a LiDAR on the iPhone 12 Pro at the time, there would be literally 12 apps in the matter of like a month coming out with so much capabilities that it's just in your pocket. Evolving from photogrammetry to LiDAR and then nerves and then Gaussian splatting. Actually, the last time that I was at SIGGRAPH, there was the Gaussian splatting paper, which I was so passionate about. And I was like, oh my God, how much time before people can play with it? Then a month later, it was an app. It's the first time that we see this kind of like compression of idea to product, like we heard earlier from Samsung. And I think this is important to think from a user perspective, from a culture perspective. How can we leverage these tools to actually protect our environment and save the world in a sense? So I started doing that. in my different art exhibition that I've done in the past 3 years, I've tried to scan the world around me. Every time I go back home to Guadeloupe to see my family, once a year, not enough vacation time in Canada, I try to save stuff around, whether it is plants, animals, moments with my family, rocks. And we have a lot of these things that disappear every single day because of climate change or, wars and things like that. So if everyone in their pocket has the power to save a little bit of the zeitgeist of the world, maybe together we can actually preserve all human culture as a whole and not just Guadeloupe or the Caribbean. And then this is an example of cool video from the very early days of video, before Comfy UI, before Runway, before Sora, where you had to do a lot of magic with text to be able to actually layer AI video on top of people dancing. This is an actual dancer from Guadeloupe. And this is now in the permanent art installation from NVIDIA Online. And I'm very proud of this. So there's a couple things that I want to show you is once you start scanning these assets and they go on a platform like Sketchfab or now Unreal Engine Fab or so on, there's so many 3D model platforms that you can save things on the internet to. You can start reusing them in real-time 3D and actually make visuals that are interesting. So this is a futuristic representation of a beach that I know in Guadeloupe. Every single rock have been scanned or photogrammed or LiDAR scanned. And together, I'm able to recreate this completely science fiction representation of that space using a real-time engine. That was before AI came out, so those are more like my 3D background. But today, you can do stuff like that in a matter of time that is so much faster and so much more powerful than what you would do with 3D. And here comes Protopica, which is the first short film that me and my co-director Will Selby has made with Sora. We were lucky enough to be part of the early alpha artists when the rest of the world didn't have access to it. Since then, we've exhibited it at a bunch of different places, including Vancouver International Film Festival. And it acquired about 500,000 views on YouTube when it came out. I think it was most about the fact that it was new and people just wanted access to Sora than the video itself. But I wanted to show it to you because it's really just 90 seconds long. This is Will. And we thought about the concept of linear storytelling. He's also from the Caribbean, he's from Venezuela. And together, we thought about the fact that in Afrofuturism, in Caribbean futurism, the concept of time is non-linear. It's actually cyclical. We don't think about the future and the past the same way. People live in the moment. There is this religion aspect of reincarnation and so on. But the thing that ties everyone together is the concept of home. Everybody in this room has a relationship with the word home. Whether you're not living at home anymore because you're not a student and you live in your own house, or if you're a student and you have to get home closer to your university and have roommates, or if you're an immigrant and you have to move away from home, or maybe home is a place that is not necessarily physical, but it's a feeling closer to someone. And, home is where the heart is, all of this. So we thought about making a story about the concept of home and then change it from a passive experience of watching a short film, which I'll show you, to an interactive experience where you can interact with the story, maybe change the path and have a non-linear storytelling experience where you can tell, for example, that if your brain activity changes while you watch the story, if you remember Bandersnatch from Netflix, there was more of a QTM, you have to click and then the story moves away from you. In this case, it's real time. So we're using EEG, a brain-computer interface. We scan your brain waves, we put you in front of a computer where the story is playing, and then you're able, while you're watching the film, to actually direct what is the next frame going to look like. And what's interesting with this is that it creates a thing that I think the cinema and theater industry really interested into, which is reusability. Because once you've seen a film, you're probably never going to pay $30 for a ticket again to watch that movie. You'll wait to see it on streaming, or unless it's a really good film you really want to rewatch. I might go watch Minecraft again with some friends. But you now have the power to go back to that film, and if you watch it again, the ending is different for you, but also for your friends. That creates commentary. That means people can go outside the cinema and say, what was the ending that you saw? And people can connect through the story in a very different way. So without further ado, let's watch quickly Protopica. It's in Guadeloupean Creole, so you got to read the subtitles.
Nous passons au résultat à chance. Fait dans les circonstances au hasard. Ah ouais. Existence en nous, c'est résultat en voyage profond. On quête à l'esprit en nous. Créons l'idéal pour y pénétrer. Imaginez un espace, plus loin qui monde physique en nous. Un espace liminal où ces esprits-là qui migrent et qui explorent une infinité de possibilités. À dans l'espace-là, ça, esprits en nous ka morpoisés. Ka essaye un paquet de formes, jusqu'à ce qu'ils ont trouvé le vaisseau idéal à eux. À part un processus qui a fait au hasard, mais un travail méticuleux. Une recherche faite à une échelle cosmique. L'esprit en nous a examiné chaque opportunité. Et il a pesé chaque chemin qu'il peut développer. Est-ce que nous qui fait dans privilège ou dans difficulté? Choix là bien réfléchi. Parce que l'esprit en nous a cherché ces expériences-là qui ont changé dans nos plus profond. Finalement, il choisit par fait d'incarnation la chose. Un nouveau départ destiné à y. La vie nous a vivre par un accident, mais un voyage bien réparé que l'essence éternelle en nous créée pour nous.
Thank you. So, I was watching with my Ray-Ban Meta. What is interesting with this short is that we did it in a kind of traditional artistic way where we didn't want the AI to direct the story. So we wrote our own story. We wrote the audio first, which is my voice, by the way, not AI. And then we added AI on top, the same way that you would use a camera to be able to actually add visuals to a story that already exists. So for us, we really use Sora in this case as a camera more than a way to kind of direct the entire movie. And we thought about how we could help not replace artists with AI by adding more to the workflow that is already existing from artists instead of replacing it. And that's really when I see emerging technologies as a superpower and augmented power. So this is an example of the art installation. This is a friend from VIF. His name is Octavian from the Mutt group. And this EEG headset is really cheap. It's called the Muse. It's about $299. And it's reading 5 brain waves from his brain. And in real time, on the screen, it's connected. It's starting by
Sopica, where your mind shapes reality.
And then it's playing those audio bits that I've recorded. And we have this visualization of a 3D world that we've built with Cinema 4D and Blender. And then some more touch designer stuff happening with point clouds data that is trying to represent how is the brain state of that person while they are sitting down in the room. We also had a lot of fun making the entire room, adding every single bit of plants and the lights and everything reacts to the brain waves. And then through this experience, the person then go and watch the film. And again, the film bits kind of happen depending on how the person feels. And then once the film is over, which is exactly the ending that we just saw, we enter this third phase of the experience where the person is seeing a visual of themselves. So this is using stream diffusion. A lot of you probably know it. At the time, this was not really known in the exhibition space, but now it's everywhere. Shout out to Dot Simulate for the package. But what I find interesting here is that most people, when they are finished with the movie, they have this kind of feeling of tranquility, and then they stop and they don't really know that it's themselves, because there's a camera that's filming them in real time. And we have to tell them, you can move now. And so we have those props, those lights, those are pool light from pools. And then we give them those lights and we're like, you can interact with it and move your hands around. And something magical happened in that moment. We really built this for a one-person experience, but there were so many people that wanted to go together as 2 or 3 or 4 participants and have this kind of communion or see how someone else's brainwaves will affect the story differently than theirs. And for the first time, I had this feedback in real time from the people exhibitioning as much as the people experimenting and experiencing my art. And the conversation that happened after were very passionate and really interesting. I have background in my Caribbean natives, and we exhibited in Vancouver where there is a huge presence of Indigenous Canadians. And we realized that even though we have a very different history, we have a shared past and a shared culture around the concept of home and the concept of belonging. And it made me just really proud to see how people get to connect through those experiences. And I think this is where art really shines. Really quick parenthesis on multisensory experiences. I've worked before Unity in a company called Immersion that is behind the haptics experience that you now have in your phone. They are behind the patents for the Taptic engine on Apple Watch, on iPhone, on Android, on BlackBerry, as much as the Switch, as much as the PS5 DualSense controller. So a lot of patents came out of that company. And we worked on a project in 2019 called the Haptics Cuff. And the idea was to create a grid of IoT/5G/AI/XR technologies that would become invisible to the users. And some of those storyboards have been made by me and the team. And in this example, we have this blind person that can put this amazing cuff around their wrist. And each of those nodules that you see that are hexagonals are capable of producing vibration, but also pressure, as much as heat, like temperature, cold, or hot. All of this is haptics. Haptics is not just a sense of touch, it's everything that relates to it. And the idea is that with the power of the grid, we would be able to allow people, for example, to have signals in their hand that would tell them if a car is approaching and they have to be a little bit more careful when they cross the street. Or if they go to a museum and they can approach a statue using LiDAR, we could know exactly the shape and the form of those objects and allow them to feel, even if they are blind, and actually see through the sense of touch. Actually, from the early 90s, there was already people, 1900s, there was already people that were able to feel and see through the sense of their tongue and represent, basically in their brain, being so malleable and so plastic, the sense of vision with the sense of touch. And I think these type of technologies are the future. Wearables are the future, like we heard earlier today. And think about how you can add AI to that and have companion experiences. We had an early Google Maps prototype with it, where because your brain is also able to know the circular movement of haptics on your wrist. So whether it's going clockwise or counterclockwise, regardless of the position of your arm in 6DOF, it's able to know the direction. So you could have a Google Map, non-visual and non-audio experience where you could know if you have to turn left or right at the next street. And those are more discrete experiences. They are less invasive. It's not ads in your face. It's not audio that's polluting your interaction with humans. It's really just about being in the moment. So I really recommend watching more about the haptics cuff. There is a free website that gives more information about it. So now we get to this, content to content, everything to everything pipelines. Me and Will were having fun with the latest Midjourney V7 models and some more LoRa-trained personal model that we use, and tried to see how far we could go when ChatGPT finally updated their DALL-E image model experience. So the first thing that we did was inputting our first image from one of the characters from the next movie of Protopica, and then asked to ChatGPT to create a T-pose character out of it. And he gave us not only the T-pose, but also as a PNG transparent, which was fascinating because I don't think other models can do that yet, or you have to go through a lot of pipeline with Comfy and so on. But this was straight from ChatGPT in my hand. And I use a lot my phone because I'm always traveling, so it's really cool to also have non-desktop experiences with AI. And then what we did was getting this model and putting it into Meshi. By the way, the Meshi team, I need to talk to you today. I'm so fascinated by what you're doing. And I think it's very interesting to then take the output from Meshi, which gives you, by the way, direct USDZ, which is basically AR in your phone if you have an iPhone or Android. And then we added, with Procreate or any other cleaning tool, some retouching on the texture painting, and finally brought it to AR, which is the final result. And I think this is, again, a very cool shortcut to going through tools that before would have taken so much time to finalize, and now you can get that in a couple of seconds. This was done in literally an hour. And there is this concept of nonlinear storytelling that I talked about before. So the multidimensional aspect of it is also very interesting. So you have a lot of visuals from our characters that we're exploring, and now we're able to just throw those two central images in ChatGPT and get a poster out of it in a couple of seconds, or have one of our characters turn into a toys. And then using Tripo, which also Billy was showing before, which is another Meshi equivalent, we can get an output that's so good in topology that we can send it right away to my 3D printer. So I actually have this little guy on my desk right now. And the fact that this was just something in my brain as an idea before, and then the next day it's on my desk and I can touch it, I can't wait to see how my kids react to that, right? That's the holodeck from Star Trek, but we are here now. And that's the beauty that I think people don't realize, that we're always chasing the next technology and the next thing, but just with the building blocks of what we have today, there's so much we can do. So how can we actually make something beneficial to the planet or to our culture by using these tools in a very positive way? So I'll just end, this is the last minute, with kind of this trailer that we put together. It's really just portraits of video using Sora. That's the latest update from Sora. And again, the idea is that you can take some of this concept and really turn them into, soon, video games. I work at Unity, so I really want to do my own video games with this IP one day. So this is using Google VO2, for example. I think VO2 is amazing. I don't know what was the data that was trained on, but I'm getting amazing visuals, the consistency of character. Sometimes you get 4 outputs with different camera angles. Think about it when you combine that with Gaussian splatting, and you can have different angle of the same scene and build literal worlds from your IPs. And to answer someone's question from earlier, this is, I think, what is interesting for artists, is to now try to go and get a niche representation of your art, something that really represents you, your culture, your people, that people can identify with you, and allow yourself to actually expand that universe beyond what it is. Get out of that book, make a movie out of it, make a game out of it, and make your team and your people participate with it. Having the community inputting their own stories into your work, I think is beautiful. So right now, that's what we do with Protopica. We're creating this community. And the idea is that in the future, we'll be able to let people tell their own stories. So thank you for your time, and happy to answer any question.
All right, thank you so much, Manuel. So any questions to Manuel? Any questions, any interest of his project, like the interest or like the expertise?
Or interested in lunch? Awesome. I'll be around all day. So if you have questions, oh, someone on the right.
Thanks for the talk. I was wondering, so with this beautiful film, I was wondering what you would say. What kind of what else would you like to see unlocked in those models, and would you like to see any guardrails around the way you create?
Absolutely. There was a very important step when we did this short for us, which we called the ethical check. So for us, it was about bringing the story back home and actually interviewing people from my family, whether it is my grandmother, people that are part of the community, that are descendant from the ancestors, and making sure that what we're saying feels authentic to them before we put it outside. So we do this ethical check with everything that we do that pertain to a certain culture. And I think, unfortunately, with the speed at which things are coming out right now, there is a lot of culture washing that's happening. And it's at the same time beautiful to see like this kind of experimentation that's happening in real time, that allow people from a different culture to use someone from another culture and then blend them and merge them and create new ideas. But at the same time, aren't we, as we do this, also kind of a little bit gentrifying the cultures? And that's the fear that I have with these tools. That's the fear that I have with this hardware and the softwares, is that because it's going so fast, we don't have enough time in the pipeline for ethical check. Similar to one question that was asked to Samsung earlier, 6 years of research becomes 6 months. Well, I hope in those 6 months, they have as much time for ethical content that they used to have for the 6 years. And if they don't, hopefully it's exponentially accelerated by AI. And so we can use AI to do more ethical, guardrails. But you need to have the intention to do it, and you need to work with a team that understand how to do it properly. That's why I'm consulting with these companies. I'm bringing these problems and those concerns and those issues to them to make sure that it's always part of the pipeline and not just bypassed to make more money faster.
Thanks for the answer. And for the first part of the question, do you have any thoughts on what kind of knobs you would like to have as an artist to enforce more control, or like to create it in a different way with these?
Absolutely. I think control is something that artists will always want more of, and it's happening more and more and faster. Like compared to 3 years ago, we had absolutely no control. It was text to whatever comes out. Good luck. Now you obviously have more sliders. The interface are becoming interesting. Designers are working with these tools to actually build something of value. But we're still missing a certain degree of control. So obviously more, user interface that are coming in the future will help with that. But maybe from the perspective of the artist, that might require us to also change the way that we work. In the project Protopica, we really call AI a co-creator, because it was not just our ideas. It was our ideas against whatever was coming from the tool. And there is a little bit of acceptance that needs to come from us as well, to let the AI give us those happy accidents, to let the AI sometimes suggest something that we would have not done by ourselves. So as much as I want control as an artist, I'm also realizing that my approach to art is evolving in real time with how the tools are evolving. It's just important to make sure that it doesn't shape me too drastically away from my personal essence. But so far, I'm enjoying it. And I think that that's the beauty of it. And then when I work with elders or kids, we are usually not the target audience for workshops. I realized that they still know how to have fun. They still know how to play. They are a little bit more imaginative than adults. And so I require anyone in this room, spend some time with your family with these tools and try to see how they approach them. It might be very different from what you expect. And there's a lot we can learn from the new generation. And that's what I'm really passionate about.